What's happening, guys? Today, just another day down here in Florida. Today's video is going to be about what to look for when you're going to import / buy an R32 GTR. We have one of our GTRs that we have right here. So this is a 1992 Nissan Skyline, and we have here Roberto, the importer, and he's going to do a little bit of talking about the car.
Hello. Okay, so premise of the video is we're just going to talk about what to look for or not to look for when you're either importing or going to buy a GTR. So let's just start off with this one. Okay, so you notice we're in a different setting. Someone decided they didn't want to press the record button earlier. So the engine bay, what to look for. Typically the first thing you want to look for is just no visual rust. A lot of these cars like to rust along the seams. They like to rust up over there where the hinges are for the hood. And then just make sure everything looks in good condition. Typically, a car that's been sitting for a long time has salt in it and stuff will have paint that's started to wear, plastics that have started to wear, rubbers that have started to get hard and corrode and crack and all this stuff. This is a good example of an engine bay, what to look for. You have nuts and bolts that are still nice and pretty. You have paint on the valve covers that obviously hasn't faded away. The hardware looks good, the fan looks good, all the plastics look good. You can even look at the ABS module. You can see how that's still shiny and nice, so it hasn't been exposed to any harsh chemicals or salts from the roads and stuff. And also, if you see any extra parts in here, you want to make sure that whoever installed it knew what they were doing. If you look over here, we have this HKS boost control solenoid. Notice how all the wires are tucked evenly and cleanly, so whoever installed this actually cared about what it looked like and how it performed. And that's what you want. You want the person that used to work on your car to have known how to work on the car and wanted to do a good job working on your car. Just like the engine bay tells a story, so does the interior. So we get in the car. We can already look for the main stuff. So uncracked dash is a plus. Typically these cars, if they're stored in any sort of sun or hot conditions, the dash cracks. So obviously this one wasn't. Tears in the seats. Tears in the seats can happen from anything. If the owner always wore denim pants and got in their car, the seats are gonna tear. That's not the worst thing in the world. Condition of the plastics, condition of the headliner. These cars, if they're not taken care of, the headliners will fall down and start doing a bunch of weird stuff. And rust. So a lot of these cars, if we open this, well, you'll see a lot of them actually will rust right in here. This one doesn't have any. But if you open up that door and you see any signs of rust or rust repair, the car probably had a rough life before. This one's kind of a cool story. This one has a lot of neat things, Nismo cup holders, pretty cool personal steering wheel, and obviously the person took their time to put some quality parts on here. We have a HKS valve controller, which is just a boost controller. We have this really neat Gretty boost gauge, and then this is a CD changer they had in the back, and this was hip and cool back in 1998, But yeah, if you come on this, so the driver's side, typically in Japan, when you have any sort of service done, there's usually gonna be a sticker showing that it was done. This is an example. So if you look here, you'll see this had an oil change done at, what does it say? At Wacko's, you know what I mean? They put some 5W40 in. It was done at 135,000 kilometers. Or I'm sorry, the next oil change was to be at 135,000 kilometers, and then the date and year. So this car had been taken care of up until it left Japan, and that's a good sign that you're getting yourself a good car.
So now that was just a little bit about the interior, guys. We are going to do what to look for about the body.
Okay, so the thing to keep in mind with the body is the most important rule of pretty much any 90s Nissan car: they rust. They rust. Chances are the car you have had some rust in it at one point, and it was either repaired, or you look for rust that can be repaired. In this case, this car had been painted at one point. Gray color is a very common color to fade, so it makes sense for someone to have painted the car for that. This one doesn't show any signs of rust repair, so I don't think it had any. But with these cars, you'll usually find rust underneath these little mud guards. You'll find them right in there where the water tends to pull up and make holes. You'll see rust coming along the weather stripping on the glass. If you see that, the car has a problem. You need to look more into it, see how far the rust has gone, see if it did have rust before, if it was repaired correctly. And all this is going to kind of tell you, again, the history of the car. If you have a nice paint job, but you get underneath the car and all you see are waves and marks where something was repaired and it wasn't repaired right, it's going to come back, it's going to be an issue, and it's scary because might not be the easy to fix rust. It could be the hard to fix rust. And you know, if you get a car like that, your value just went down a lot. With all that being said, if you have a GTR with a little bit of rust, don't worry about it. It's typically fixable. It's not the end of the world. And then I guess the next thing to look for would be any major body damage. So typically Japan is a small island. It's really tight. If the car was being driven in Tokyo or any of the big cities, chances are it probably got in some little fender bender in its life. And typically you know this by just looking up the auction information. Most importers get their cars from auction, and the auction does supply like what we would call a Carfax here in the States, which tells you, hey, you know, was the car in an accident? I believe this car had some history from like the late 90s where like it had a dent in the bumper repaired, so obviously that was like a fender bender, but that's gone. It's nowhere to be seen, so clearly this was done and repaired correctly. But you know, you'll have cars come in where you start tapping around and all of a sudden those whole side panels Bondo, or you know, we'll have like hoods that don't match the fenders and all this stuff. If you see kind of stuff like that where the car has different colors, different variations, there's waviness, chances are the car was probably just repaired real quick to sell. And those are the cars you kind of want to stay away from. And then you find out, you know, a year later when you have rust coming out the quarter panel, paint chipping and all this stuff, that you didn't buy the car that you were expecting to get.
So the last little thing that we're going to do while we're standing here is we're going to go over some modifications that you can look for when you do your car, when you buy your car. Don't be afraid of modifications. Most of the time, they're good ones. So we're going to have Roberto talk some more.
Yeah, like Marcus just said, don't be scared of modifications. I mean, these cars were at one point, well, not at one point, they always have been since day one sports cars. And what do you do with sports cars? You try to make them a little faster. You know, and the person that bought this brand new in '92 had that same mentality that someone buying this, you know, 26 years later is going to have, with as far as wanting it to be a little faster. Intakes are super common. Boost controllers are super common. I believe this car has a full catback. It's a HKS copy. I don't know what brand it is, but we got upgraded suspension arms, all this stuff like that. Any sort of modification that can either be taken off or put back to stock doesn't really count as a modification. You know, the stuff you want to look for that's negative would be like, did it have a wide body kit on it? You know, were there holes drilled into it?
Cams?
Well, cams are reversible. You know, cams are reversible. But with stuff like that, though, you know, like I've seen a lot of cars like big single turbos where they have to cut into the chassis to make piping and stuff fit. That's stuff I like to stay away from because that's not reversible. You know,
yeah.
You can't go back in time and take that stuff off, at least not easily. Clutches doesn't matter. If it has a cool clutch in it, who cares? You know, a lot of that stuff is just how it was installed. You know what I mean? Obviously, like we talked about earlier, whoever installed this boost controller knew exactly what they were doing. They did a good job at it. You know, all these parts that are here were installed correctly. Clearly, they were done professionally, and there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't, you know, it definitely doesn't lower the value of the car, and it's not something that anyone should be scared of. As long as the car can still be put back to stock, if that's what you're looking for, it's okay. It's no big deal.
If anything, it could kind of boost the value of the car, right?
A lot of parts do. So, like for example, this car. I mean, this car's sitting here with a $300 oil cap. You know what I mean? You have no idea how many people have offered me money for those Nismo cup holders. You know, so stuff like that will increase the value. And we've had a lot of cars coming in with $1,000 used ARC radiators and a bunch of goodies and parts, and that stuff's great, man. I mean, how many of our customers have actually wanted a stock car, bought one with a couple parts on it, sold them, made a little money, and put the car back to stock the way they wanted? So nothing wrong with that.
So now we're just going to go ahead and take it for a spin. So, how does it feel?
This is one of those GTRs that feels like, that I have to assume is driving right now the way that it drove back in '92 when it left. But, let's talk about some of the things to look for. So, hypothetically, You don't always get a chance to drive the car, but if you're able to see a video of it driving or something like that, these are the kind of things you want to look for. I'm going to steal that camera from Marcus there real quick. So first thing to look at is no lights on the dash. You know, if these cars have any issues with like the Hikis or the Tesla system, you're going to see lights. And obviously, as you can see, no lights. Next thing to look for is, well, does the engine start and stay running easy? So we're going to crank this. Nice easy start, stays running. Oil pressure, as you can see, goes right up. That's what we want. RBs do have horrible oiling problems, so we want to make sure we don't have an engine with problems. And that's another thing too. You want to make sure you don't hear anything, no ticks, no knocks, no anything like that, because at that point that car is not going to do you any good if you have to replace an engine or do any sort of major work to it. So let's take this for a spin. So if you do get a chance to drive your car, the first thing you're going to want to do is kind of put it through the gears, put it through the paces, make sure there's nothing obviously wrong with it. It's not pulling super hard to one side or the other. That could be a sign of damage. Typically, after someone fixes a car with an issue, they never align it. And if a car is pulling really hard to the left, really hard to the right, driving like crabbing down the road, where it's a little bit sideways, you probably have a car with a problem. I'm going to go to the gears. Make sure there's no hesitation. Brakes on these cars are notorious for getting a little spongy. The master cylinders sometimes just go bad. So you want to kind of feel for that. If you have spongy brakes, you probably either have very low brake pads or it's time for brake master cylinders. So, you know, when it comes down to paying for the car, keep in mind if you're going to be having to do maintenance off the bat, pay the amount accordingly. That'll let you buy the car and fix it afterwards. As far as suspension goes, these cars are great from factory. Putting coilovers and stuff on them does make them a little better, but the factory suspension should feel very tight. If you have a car that's bouncing all over the place and doing weird stuff, chances are you have an issue, whether it's old bushings, you know, what's it called, worn shocks, stuff like that. If you get in one of these cars and it doesn't feel like a tight sports car around a turn, there's a problem.
So guys, we're just going to wrap up all about R32 GTRs. This is just this is a basic general one on GTRs and R32s. We will be doing more on R33s when we start getting them in at the shop, and just keep getting more of the 33s and 34s when those become available, and just things like that. So Roberto's just going to wrap this up really quick.
Yeah, so in conclusion, to just finalize the video, just wanted to go through all the points. When buying these cars, you know, use your eyes, use your ears, look at the engine bays, make sure they're not, you know, filthy and leaking, and make sure the parts, if there are any aftermarket parts, were installed correctly. Look for the rust, listen to the engine. If your importer or whoever you're buying the car from is out of state and you can't actually go see the car in person, get a video, you know, high quality video, have them get an angle that has, you know, pictures of as many angles as possible, get a video of it being driven around, cold start, warm start, you know, protect yourself from issues, you know. And that's it, you know. The other thing from that is, hey, don't be scared of aftermarket parts. These cars are modified. That was kind of the point of them. You know, they are a sports car. If you see some nice wheels, if you see an intake, an exhaust, don't be scared of it. That's just how it goes with these things.
So guys, that's just a conclusion of the video. I hope you guys liked it, and I will see you guys